Good day, everyone. Eric from Helps YouTube Live. Good to have you here today on August 20th, 2025. Time is flying. Uh, we're getting close to September. Hard to believe. Okay, so I'm glad to have you here. I'm glad to speak with you. My name's Eric, been an attorney for 46 years, the founder of Helps. Helps is a national law firm that we have two missions. One is we protect seniors from collector harassment. We do that under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, which provides if you're represented by an attorney, collectors can no longer call or send you demand letters anymore. They have to leave you alone. Our second mission is to educate seniors how they maintain their financial independence. And we also like to expose all the misinformation that seniors are given, seniors that have debt that are given. You know, almost half seniors have incomes within 200% of the poverty line. Which means they struggle, and a sizable percentage of those seniors have debts they can't afford to pay. And so if you're having problems financially, if you're a senior, uh, you're not alone. You got plenty of company. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat feature. I'm going to address them there. You can always call us toll free 855-435-7787. We don't want you to worry. Okay, that's the reason Helps was founded. Before I started Helps, I filed between 30 and 40,000 bankruptcies, and Helps was founded so that seniors, see, a lot of seniors didn't need to file bankruptcy because their income was protected. But if they, you know, but when they went home, they couldn't afford to file bankruptcy. When they went home, the creditors could call and make their lives miserable. So Helps was founded so seniors would be able to get some relief. If you're represented by an attorney, collectors have to leave them alone. We represent you ongoing. It's not just one time, literally forever. So you don't have to deal with collectors. Okay. And we don't turn anyone away that qualifies for our service. So I'm glad to have you here. So tomorrow we're going to do it at a different time. Okay. And it's going to be at, let's see, 12 Pacific, 1 Mountain, 2 Central, which is the time I'm in. And then that would be 3 Eastern. Got it? Okay. So it'll be what 2 hours later than normal, and we'll see how that goes. So I'll address your questions in the chat feature, and I'll address this question first before I get to our central topic for today. Viral asks, I'm a Helps client. I just got garnishment letter. Can I just let them take money every 2 weeks? Well, I don't know who's garnishing your Viral. I mean, are you talking about your employment? Okay. If you're employed, and in every state, there's a federal law that protects a minimum of $217.50 net per week in wages. That's $435 every 2 weeks. And then a lot of states protect more than that, and some states don't even permit garnishment. So it depends the state where you live in. Okay, so you can call and go over that with us, and we'll be glad to talk to you about it. Yeah, like for example, if you lived in Texas, they couldn't garnish anything. South Carolina, difficult to garnish there. California protects a larger amount. Nevada, a lot of it varies from state to state, but in any event, if a state doesn't have a special law that protects your income, $217.50 net per week is protected. So Viral, it depends on how much your take-home pay is, and the state where you live in. Kentucky, that's I don't think they have a special protection. They go into the federal protection. Depends on how much you get. Call and talk to us. We'll go over it. Do you know how much you get normally? How often do you get paid? You get paid every 2 weeks. What is your normal take home after they take out for taxes? That would tell you how much they could garnish you, if anything. And if you didn't want to be garnished, you can lower your. Every pay fluctuates, but what's an average? So Miss H asks if there are people that may be willing to come on your show and answer questions you from time to time. Is it okay to remind people that do the same for people? And she, yeah, I don't care. Yeah, they could contact me directly, Olsen at helpsushere.org. So anywhere from 800 to 600 every 2 weeks. So you make quite a bit over that protected amount of 435, and they could garnish. So you're going to want to. So if a take home was 600 net, you could take 25% of that. And do the math. $175 somewhere in that range. So you may want to call and talk to us, and we'll go over your options. Okay. So the title for today is how debt relief scams or how debt relief companies don't give seniors complete information. So we have a lot of clients call us that are signed up with Freedom Debt Relief. So I'm just going to show you a little article they put in on August 5th. There we go. Here it goes. How to Find Debt Relief for Seniors by Peter Warden, August 5th, 2025. Know who is now? Let's see his expertise. Not an attorney, but he's been paid to write this article for Freedom Debt Relief. So let's see what he says. He talks about how seniors face unique challenges when it comes to debt. Often seniors are on fixed or limited income. And he says, there are ways to tackle debt at any age and find financial peace of mind. Let's explore the debt relief options available to you. Okay, understanding debt relief, eligibility crier for senior debt. He says there aren't any age barriers. He talks about. Okay, now what's interesting about that? Nowhere does he say, by the way, if you're a senior getting Social Security or a pension or disability or VA benefits, your money is protected. If you owe the debt, you don't have to pay it. And there's a federal law called the Fair Debt Collection Practices, provides that if you send a letter to a debt collector, they have to leave you alone. No, the only thing he says is you can consolidate your debt to get more affordable payments, work with a credit counselor to get a handle on your budget, get help from your family or friends to pay the debt, file for bankruptcy, which seniors don't need to do normally or they can't afford to, settle your debt for less than the full amount. He doesn't, not once does this article for Freedom Debt Relief mention the fact that your income is protected, a senior. Doesn't say that. Now, if they would say that, then you would realize that you wouldn't need their help and they wouldn't sign you up. And they get paid when you pay them. When they try to settle a debt from you, they get a certain percentage. Okay, I think they're nonprofit. Doesn't matter if they're profit or nonprofit. They're, with rare exceptions, they're all the same. They put seniors into utter poverty, making payments they can't afford for debts they don't need to pay. And then he goes on and he talks about the different methods. Okay, so I'll just look at this, give him benefit of the doubt. Okay, debt consolidation, talks about that. Credit counseling. Now, let's see, if you click on these buttons, the debt consolidation loan, it's a new August 16th, just a few days ago. I don't want to get into that, but see, it's all an advertisement for Freedom Debt Relief. Okay, then bankruptcy. Debt settlement. And then what is Freedom Debt Relief for seniors? Okay, let's read this. You'll have to start having a chat with one of our debt experts. He or she will listen without any judgment, give you a free debt evaluation, advise you of your options. Do you, when we talk to people about freedom debt relief, and we hear a lot of stories from them, and all these debt managements, or when I talk to them, you know, um, I'll ask, uh, did they tell you, by the way, Mr. Jones or Mrs. Jones or whatever your name is, that your income was protected, that no one could touch your Social Security? And they'll say, no, Mr. Olsen, or no, Eric, they never told me that. Well, of course they didn't tell you that. They would have told you that. You would have realized that you didn't need their help. Okay, so what else does this guy say? Uh, if you and your expert agree that debt settlement is your best option, they'll set up a dedicated account where you can start saving up money to offer your creditors. Um, does it work? Absolutely. So far, Freedom Debt Relief has helped more than 4 million customers. How do you choose the right debt relief program? And it goes on. And this is the article that is for seniors. Okay. Now, they help people other than seniors. And maybe if they help other people than seniors, you know, maybe they're fine. Not necessarily, but they don't tell seniors their rights. They don't tell seniors that their income is safe and protected. Okay. They may be great for a lot of people, but for seniors, these companies routinely, with few exceptions, withhold the most critical piece of information that a senior needs to know. And that's the fact that their income is protected. I'm not done. So, as an aside, let's talk about what the definition of fraud is. There's a thing in the law called fraud by omission. And the definition is this occurs when someone perpetuates fraud by omitting a material fact. Okay, they don't tell someone something that is material. What does it mean it's material? That's something that a person would need to make their decision. And in order to prove that it's a material fact, you have to show a material fact was omitted, the omission was made with the intent to defraud, uh, the injured party justifiably relied on the incomplete information, the injured party suffered an injury or damage as a result. Fraud by omission doesn't apply if the withheld information is readily available through public sources. So maybe what some of these companies might say, well, we don't have to tell people that their income is protected because they could find that out on them for themselves. Well, it's kind of hard to find out for yourselves when all these companies withhold this information. When the National Council on Aging doesn't tell seniors their income is protected, instead they steer them toward debt management. And all these debt management, like Freedom, never mention the fact. So if you're with debt management or debt settlement and they never told that your income was protected, they're withholding, and you're a senior getting Social Security, a pension, disability, VA benefits. They failed to tell you the most critical thing you need to know, that your income is safe and protected. Okay. I talk about that a lot. I'm sorry. But it just happens too much. Okay. Let's say JBIR asks, I'm a client. Things just got worse. I was in a car wreck where the other driver is cited by law enforcement, but other insurance company is disputing. I have no car now, no money for another car, or no money for an attorney. Any advice? This is not going to end well. Trying to be positive. Okay. So one way out of this is if you were in an accident and you were hurt and it was the other party's fault, okay, and they were cited by the cops. I'm sure they were cited, you know, as being an at-fault driver. And if you had insurance, well, okay, and you can go to an attorney. you probably need to be hurt. Okay. Because if you have a claim for an injury, if you went to the doctor, even now, even maybe a week later or whatever, you go to a doctor, there are attorneys, at least where I live, every third billboard is an advertisement for an attorney to represent someone if they're injured in an accident. So you can get an attorney to represent you if you're hurt in an accident to go after and they'll represent you. They'll go against that other insurance company. Okay, so you can call, and they do it for free. They do it on a contingent basis. In other words, they don't get paid unless they collect money for you. Now, if you weren't hurt and your car was damaged, depending on the value of your car, you might get an attorney just to represent you to get the value of the car. But it's definitely a lot easier if you were in an accident and you were hurt in some way. It doesn't have to be a serious injury, maybe just a strained neck or whatever, and you have to go to the doctor a couple times. But you may want to talk to call an attorney that does personal injury cases. Okay. And you can call and talk to me if you need to. I don't represent people in those kind of cases. I did when I was a younger attorney a lot of times. Okay, so I know what the law is and I know what happens. But if you were hurt, there's a lot of attorneys that will represent you. Okay. So when you don't have questions, I have these things that I've written down that people have called in and asked. So this person contacted us from, I think it looks like Alabama, ages 73 and 70, and they have 20,000 in debt. And they want to thank us for the informative videos. I've been in debt for some time and been trying to pay everyone as best we could. Our total income is from Social Security, military retirement, and VA disability compensation. So all their income is protected. It's Social Security, military retirement is protected, VA disability is protected. While these amounts should be enough to get by, we are finding the credit card debts are eating us alive. This past payday, we paid the cards we wish to keep and left those we want to get rid of unpaid. Already some are calling daily. I prepared letters to the creditors requesting they close these accounts. Okay. I realize there are many points left out on this email. However, I understand the process and risks we are taking from this. My wife especially just wishes some reinsurance that our money will be safe as exempt from creditors. In addition, any suggestions you might have would be appreciated. Thanks. So we're going to call this person back. We're going to ask them some questions and we'll explain to them how their income is protected. If they want our help, they can roll in help. So they give us the creditors they want to pay. We'll send a cease and desist letter out to those creditors or collectors, and they're going to leave them alone. So they don't have to deal with the debt. Okay. And so if you're a senior or disabled person receiving protected income, having financial issues with debt, give us a call, 855-435-7787. Helps law firm, and we'll help people in all 50 states. Okay. So this person contacts us. They say, I'm confused by the statute of limitations. If the debt happened in 2013 and the debt keeps being sold and updated to the current year. Uh, so this was a comment someone made on a video. And my answer, I said, the statute of limitations in order to sue someone is based on state law and it normally begins from when the debt was incurred or when the last payment on the debt was made. So let's say the statute of limitations is 5 years and you incurred the debt over 5 years ago, okay, but you made a payment up to a year ago. Well, then the statute of limitations normally would begin from when you last made a payment a year ago, 5 years from then. Now, there might be an exception in a few states, but normally it goes from the date when you last made a payment. Okay? But once again, if you're getting protected income and like Social Security, a pension, if you're sued, you don't need to worry because even if they get a judgment and you owe the money, they're going to get a judgment likely. They can't collect from you. Okay. There's state laws that protect assets. It's not the practice of consumer judgment creditors to go after people's property that isn't exempt under state law. They don't do it. They usually, if the most they would do is try to garnish your bank account. As long as you kept the balance in your bank account less than twice the amount of your federal benefit, that money's going to be protected automatically by your bank without you having to do anything. That was a rule that was put in effect in 2012. Probably 999 out of 1,000 attorneys don't know that rules, and I've yet to meet a bank manager that understands that rule. However, the department of the bank that deals with garnishments, they understand that rule. Okay. So East Salt Lake says, when a judgment is granted, do they need to file anything before attempting to garnish? Even though the income is protected, is there any other documents they need to file before trying to collect? There might be an exception in some states, but no, the answer is no. They can just, uh, if they were to warn you that they were going to be garnished, then you'd pull your money out of your bank account. So no, they just do it out of the blue. But once again, we tell our clients if you've been sued, you should just have normally one account, and that's the account to which your Social Security goes, and just keep the balance in there less than twice the amount of what you get in Social Security each month or any additional federal benefits. For example, a guy called me earlier today, and he was letting me know that, Eric, I'm going to get a VA benefit about $300 a month. Is that going to be protected? I said, yeah. And I said, so it's the amount protected in your bank account will be your Social Security plus this extra $300 you get in a VA benefit. They're both federal benefits. That's going to be protected automatically. No one can take it. Okay. Now, if you happen to have more than that in there, you could still get it returned to you. You'd have to file a challenge of garnishment or claim of exemption. But most of our time, our clients tell us, well, Eric, I never have more than twice the amount of my federal benefit in my account at any one time. Okay. So Kat asks, in a credit bureau report, will a judgment or charge off be listed? Not a judgment or a lawsuit. They stopped including reporting lawsuits in credit reports about 2018 or 2019. They don't do that anymore. You're right. Charge offs, yes. And that. So this is another comment on a video. And he says, I see a lot of comments about bankruptcy. Why are things like that being considered if we don't have to pay our debt? So where they probably saw one of our videos or they read articles like this last one I talked to at the beginning today, where they give us an option of bankruptcy, and they say, the guys ask us, so why are they talking about bankruptcy? If we're seniors, we don't need to file bankruptcy if our income's protected. Because the people writing these articles, folks, don't know what they're talking about. They work in different completely fields. Or what they do is they read something someone wrote and they just write it in their own words. Okay? You're going to get correct information here. It helps. If you're a senior disabled VA on getting a pension, whatever, your income is protected under federal and state laws. It can't be taken from you. Okay? Even if you're sued. Okay? The only exception would be if you owed past child support, but we run into that so very rarely. Or if you owed federal income taxes, the IRS could possibly do a set off of 15% of Social Security. But if your income is lower or modest income, you can probably get on what's called currently not collectible status, and they would stop or they would not try to offset 15% of Social Security. So don't, and I don't see the IRS going after people's pensions. Legally, they could do that, but they just don't do that. I've never seen it done. Um, um, so, so you're going to be fine. Okay. So East Salt Lake asks, would you go over inheritance again, please? If you receive inheritance anytime after a judgment taken, what's the best way to receive that without a judgment taken? Well, first off, the inheritance may not be protected under, may not be exempt. Now, it depends on the state. Some states have what's called wild card exemptions, which protect a certain amount of equity in property that's not covered under state law. For example, Texas has, I think, like a 50,000 wild card exemption. So if you don't have a whole lot of stuff, but you had this one asset that's worth an inheritance, it was worth $30,000, then it would be protected under that Texas wildcard exemption. However, in order for them to get your inheritance, first off, they'd have to sue you, get a judgment, and then they'd have to know about the inheritance. And how are they going to know about the inheritance? They're not. I mean, there's no place they're going to find out what you're getting an inheritance. So if you got the inheritance, you could take the money, you know, put it in a safe place, or you spend it, whatever. There's ways to protect those funds. You know, just because you have an asset that's non-exempt doesn't mean that you're going to lose it. Okay. Now, if you're on the car wreck issue, you know, if you had coverage on your car and your car was damaged, uh, full coverage, then you know you could claim under your insurance company, and your insurance company would get in a fight with the other insurance company. You know, I know a lot about car insurance because I used to do a lot of PI cases, personal injury cases. Remember, I always tell people insurance companies are in the business to do what? You know, offer insurance. And uh, how do they make money? I'd say, how do they make money? And people say, well, they make money by charging us a premium. And you know what my answer to that is? That's not how they make money. They make money by not paying claims. That's how they make their money. So if someone gets in a wreck that they're representing, an adjuster is assigned, and they'll put a number. Okay, you can settle this case for $5,000 or 10,000, whatever it is. And if he could sell it for $1,000 or nothing, then and they had set aside 10,000 to cover their liability, and they settle it for 1,000, then the company just made $9,000. So that's how the insurance companies make money. They don't make money off of premiums. They make money off by settling cases for less than what they're worth. Okay, so you're kind of at a disadvantage. So if you're ever in an accident when there's an injury and stuff, you got to get an attorney to you can represent yourself, but uh, um, that attorneys will do these cases without charging money. The thing too is if you represent yourself, how often do you have this happen? Maybe once or twice in your life. But the insurance adjuster on the other side, he's doing this every day of the week. Who do you think knows more about the law and how to take advantage of people? You bet, the insurance adjuster. So anyway, yeah, we talked to you about that. We don't represent people in auto accident cases, but like I said, our mission is to protect seniors from collective harassment, and number two, educate seniors how they can maintain their financial independence. That's why we're doing these YouTube live videos. Okay. Okay. Here's another one. Probably the number one reason helps was founded. Well, one of the top two or three reasons is to deal with people that are natural born worriers. Now, we help seniors, but and I could just tell a senior, hey, they can't do anything, and then the senior's going to, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to worry about it. Well, the problem is we all worry. We always need to ask questions, and some worry more than others. So I had a guy today I called to, a really nice guy. I don't know, he may be listening to me right now. He's from Florida. And at the end of that conversation, I said, you're a natural born warrior. And he said, yeah, that's right, Eric, I am. I said, that's okay. That's why Helps was founded, just specifically to help you. And what he was worried about was he'd been, and I also told him, I said, you're reading too much, because he'd been reading on the internet about these problems he could have. And they can get people turned up when they're not going to happen. So he had a car. The Florida exemption went up a couple of years ago. I think it protects 5,000 equity in a car. But he had a car that might have been worth $7,000 to $10,000, and he was worried that if they got a judgment, since his car was worth $7,000 to $10,000, and he didn't own anything, they were going to take his car. And I explained to him, well, first off, it's not the practice of consumer judgment creditors to go after people's cars. They just don't do it. Okay, they would never do it. It's too complicated, way too complicated. And then he had mentioned the fact that there was a kind of a wild card exemption in Florida, and yet there is. But I said we don't even need to worry about it, because you're never going to have a problem in the first place. So if you have a car that's worth more money than what your state allows, and they get a judgment, no, they're not going to come after the car. Now, I could envision a scenario where it might make sense for a creditor to do that, but we just don't see them doing it. So you don't need to worry about that. Okay. Yeah, as a natural born warrior, I love these videos. Yeah, that's right. That's okay. That's what we're here for. I don't want you to worry. Or that's my problem, too much researching. Yeah, you're like the guy I talked to today in Florida. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and I've told that to a lot of people. Some people coming in bankruptcy, I'd say, and they all these scenarios. And I said, you've been reading too much. Okay, you've been reading too much. It gets you in trouble, because uh, what if, what's that? Okay, we talk here. It helps about what the real world is like. Okay, you're right. Utah needs a wild card exemption. You may have heard me talk about Utah. I've got a long history with Utah. I used to be a member of the Utah bar at one time. Okay, I went to college in Utah. Um, yeah, they have specific exemptions in Utah. So uh, if you have if you have an item that's not covered in that specific possession, like a computer, a laptop, or even a cell phone or a lawnmower, then technically a Utah constable can repossess that item, sell it, and use it to pay debt. And they use that as a threat sometimes. Collectors do, to get people to pay debts. So they shake them down in Utah. I find, after a long time ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I got an article published in the Deseret News Sunday paper, front page, about this shakedown process that goes on in Utah. We haven't had as much of a problem since that article came out. Anyway, but there's other states. Collectors will use state laws to try to take advantage of people and try to collect from them. But if you're worried about any of this stuff, you call us on the phone. This person contacts us from Indiana. I'm a senior citizen with Social Security and some pension. My husband also gets Social Security and pension, no other income. I had a credit card judgment entered against me. I've been ordered to appear in court next month. Is there any way I can prevent that or stop the hearing by notifying the collection agency or the court that my only income is exempt? If so, how would I go about this? Should I complete the exemption form and send to the parties involved? I do not own a home. We rent, and autos are titled to my spouse, and we have any advice is sincerely appreciated. Thank you for helping seniors navigate this challenging. So we'll call and talk to this person. I don't know what the paper it is they're looking at that makes them think they're going to have to go to court. next. They may be confused. They may not necessarily need to go to court. Maybe they're adding one and one and coming up with 20. But we help people, guide them. We don't give legal advice. We give legal information. We don't represent people in court. But this person's not going to need to worry because they're right. Their income is Social Security and a pension. It's protected. No one can collect from them. They don't have to pay the debt. Okay. So Brent just asked, I joined your program and my bills are paid for August, but I need groceries until September 1st. What happens if I use the credit card? I'm giving up one last time to get me through till the 3rd. Nothing. Okay. You know, when I used to do bankruptcies, people would come into me and once in a while they'd say, well, you know, I'm not going to file bankruptcy for a couple months and I got this credit card. Can I run up my credit card? And I tell them, well, that's between you and your conscience. There could theoretically be a problem. I used to tell people sometimes, I said, well, you know, if it was a matter of food for my kids or gas to get to work, you know, that's up to you. Okay. That's on you. I'm not going to tell you to run up your credit card if your intent is not to pay it. But I can tell you the law is that if you use the credit card and use the, you know, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. They can't collect from you, period. So I'm reminding you tomorrow we're going to do this at a different time. It's going to be 12 Pacific, 1 Mountain, 2 Central, 3 Eastern time tomorrow. This may be ongoing on Thursdays, but Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, same time as it is now. It's not going to matter so much because a lot of people, you know, in fact, the vast majority look at this after it's been published. But I know there's some people that like to look at it every day, and that's great. So I want to let you know that we're going to do it 2 hours later from the normal time. So here's a comment on one of our videos. Sorry. I love some of these comments. This is, I've been listening to your videos. It all sounds great until you have to submit your IRS income taxes. My debts turn into a nightmare. Taxes over debts being canceled. I received a 1099 from the credit card companies that I could not afford either. So in the end, they get your money or you go to jail. I'm a senior and I've already got screwed. He's wrong. He added up one and one and came up with 37. Okay. So, well, did I reply? Oh, yeah. This is my response. I said, this is not the case. I believe we discussed 1099-C in this video with senior living, and then I sent him a link to a video about 1099-C that we did with senior living. And I said, there is much misinformation on this topic. If a person is insolvent, meaning that their debts exceed their assets, then there is no taxes because of a 1099-C. IRS Form 982 can be filed, but even if there is a tax, many, if not most, lower income seniors can qualify for currently not collectible status with IRS. Here's a link to the video from it helps explain all this in more detail, and then I put the video in the response. So, yeah, if you think because you don't pay your debt, you're going to have to pay taxes, I just don't see it happening. Okay, one reason is if your only income is Social Security, you're not required to file tax returns. You get a 1099-C. Uh, you know, IRS doesn't follow up on that as a practice. They're not going to do anything. Um, and you could always file the tax return later if you were required to, but I don't see that happening. But let's say you were required to file taxes. So if your debts exceed your assets, you can file Form 982, and it's like the box 1B. I'm insolvent, which means my debts exceed my assets. Essentially, that's what it says. There'd be no tax. That's if you had to file a tax return. Now, um, let's say you did have to file a tax return and you did have to file a 1099-C and you did owe taxes. Well, if your income's modest or lower, I'm talking about 3,500 or more, a little bit more, maybe even if you're a couple, and $2,500 or more or less, and if you're a single person, you probably can qualify for what is called currently not collectible status with IRS, where you don't have to pay the tax. Okay, so we just don't run into a problem with this with our clients. Now, I suppose if you're made a lot of money and you got a 1099-C, there could be a tax implication, but that doesn't apply to the clients that helps deals with. Our clients aren't in that category. Okay. I don't want you to miss soap opera. I got to be friends where I'm at now with a guy that from New York, and you know what he did for a job? You know, he designed the sets for soap operas. That's what he did. He got the furniture, he put it the way it was supposed to be, and he started talking to me. It was very complicated how they did this stuff, but that's what he did for. He retired doing that, designing sets for soap operas. And I asked him, I said, well, what was it like working in a soap opera? Was it like a soap opera within the soap opera? And he said, yes, it was. He said, there was always these conflicts and little love interests going on amongst the actors and stuff that wasn't part of the soap opera, but that's what he did. He designed sets for soap operas. Yeah, that's right. So this person contacts us from Iowa. Their ages are 62 and 64. Now, when I say 62 and 64, the husband is 62, the wife is 64. It helps. We always put the husband first on our, like income. It just makes us easier if we're consistent on how we do this. So they contacted us a couple of years ago, and it says we have an RV we can't afford, and the wife was getting disability. She was an RN, and apparently she was applying for that. She can't work anymore. He says, I have no fear of collection agencies. Uh, they have a mobile home. I apparently had a mobile home that was free and clear. Then they called us again this last December. They have a mobile home in a mobile home park, and apparently they're going to sell it. They have individual and joint credit card debt. Then they called us in January of this year. They're receiving Social Security income, but they have a court date from this lawsuit. Said the only debt they need assistance with is this credit RV debt. And then this, I gotta laugh. Sorry. He says, he stated this potential client, he stated that he has been calling and leaving messages and we haven't called back. Is this how your business is run? Okay. And the paralegal said, well, we explained that we have contacted him. The last call was on January 21st. That was 3 days before. And that's what we said. Okay. He says, I talked to someone yesterday. Sometimes, we're busy. We try to call people back. We call people back, but sometimes person's definition of I don't get a call back is if, okay, I wasn't at home to get your call. You called me, but I wasn't home to get your call. Therefore, I didn't get a call back because I wasn't there to receive it. Now, I'm not saying we're totally innocent, but we do try to call people back. And if you don't get a call from us, call again. Okay. Say the whole purpose of helps is we represent people ongoing. Now, this guy wasn't even a client; he's a potential client. But we want to help people no matter where you are. So Yeah, call us. And then didn't hear from him from January, but now he called back yesterday. He wanted to sign up with one of our particular paralegals. She wasn't available at the moment to get signed up, and he wants to do it together. Okay. And so he called today, and apparently he enrolled with us today. So it's pretty typical. People, if you have a problem, we get your information, we save it, and I take 3 or 4 months before you decide to enroll. That's fine. No pressure. We don't want you to worry. Is the bottom line. We're here to help people, and we're going to give you accurate information. Okay. Ms. HS, Eric, have you noticed that seniors are getting calls from the Social Security Administration saying about misinformation on their Social Security files? They're calling people now. I haven't heard that. Okay, that may be, but I haven't heard that. I'd be I'd be I'd be nervous about anyone calling me. That might be a phishing expedition to get your Social Security number to scam you. Okay. So Yin Yang asks, there are numerous reasons to prevent obtaining um, IRS non-collectible status, and then it says, and they can revoke it. Uh, well, it's not my experience that they revoke non-collectible status, currently not collectible status with the IRS. It's for persons that are seniors that are retired on Social Security. Might be for younger persons that are temporarily out of work or whatever, but not for seniors. It's usually it's just ongoing. Okay. Brian asks, I'm gonna get helps to send a letter to a firm for discover the entry of the judgment will be entered. Then do I claim exemption North Carolina? Tired of Well, yeah. Call us and we'll talk to you about North Carolina. North Carolina is a special state, not in a positive way when it comes to debt and collections. What about SBA? If you owe an SBA loan, can you file bankruptcy? Yeah. So a government agency, like if you owe IRS, you get on currently not collectible status. If you owe student loans, you can get on income-based repayment plan, not pay anything. Right now, they're not trying to set off Social Security, but if you owe a debt to another federal agency, they could offset 15% of your Social Security. If they were to do that, the only way to maybe stop that from happening is by filing bankruptcy. We talked to people about that. The law should change on that. That was a law that was put into effect in 1996. What is that? 30 years later, it hasn't changed. When helps gets big enough, hopefully, and we will be someday, and hopefully I'm alive when that happens, I think we can do more in the way of legislation. These laws that protect poor seniors, like this ability for federal agencies to garnish 15% of Social Security, you know, AARP should be doing something about that, or uh, National Council on Aging. That's right up there, and they've got the bucks to do it, but they don't do it. Okay, they call me and I tell them exactly what to do, and they would have the bandwidth and the pressure and the money to hire lobbyists to go into Washington and get some of these laws changed that hurt poor seniors. They could do it. The, these congressmen could not vote against it, some of these laws. Okay? They could not vote against it. But the problem is some of these, the people that manage these businesses, they don't understand these problems. I think that's it. Or maybe they're too comfortable with what they're doing. 3 p.m. Eastern time for tomorrow. Right. How are we doing on time? Got 9 more minutes. So this person contacts us from Wisconsin. It says, I'm in a Chapter 11 bankruptcy. I don't think they're in Chapter that. I think they mean Chapter 13. I want to protect my home, especially in case something happens to me. I'm not sure how to do this. And then apparently I talked to this person about, I told them what they needed to do. And it was the end of December of this year, of last year. Okay. Um, and I explained how their Chapter 13 could be dismissed. And I explained, call us when your case is dismissed. And I sent an email about bankruptcy versus helps. Talked to her about how to change her bank account and how to protect her home for her kids. And that she could call back when the Chapter 13 is dismissed and we could enroll her then. Well, lo and behold, today she called back. Bankruptcy was dismissed. Must have been one of the daughters calling with mom. Mom has medical issues and house is in disrepair. Uh, and I guess she enrolled today. Looks like it. Let me see. Is that it? Yeah. Mary says, I got my second letter concerning Capital One and successor by merger to Discover Bank that came from Circuit Court. Do I need to do anything about it? No. Just means that someone else has bought the case and is handling the lawsuit. If your income is protected, Mary, you don't need to worry. They get a judgment they can't collect from you. Just keep less than twice the amount of your federal benefit in your bank account. So here's another one from Wisconsin. 10 or more calls a day. So bad I turned my ringer off. And then I missed the other calls I claimed. I've claimed bankruptcy in 2019. So he incurred a bunch of debt after the bankruptcy. See, the creditors are so anxious to make money. You know, all my debt is credit cards, 100%. No missed payments until January of this year. I stopped making payments to 7 credit cards. I blocked every card so I couldn't use them. After 30 days, I messaged each card and said, I'm sorry, but I've hit hard times. I'm 59 and have been disabled since 2020. Um, I live with my mom. Both of us helped each other. In January of this year, she passed away. So I don't have any help anymore with finances. I have to pay everything myself. On top of that, my lot space jumped up $200. I now go to several food pantries and I still run out, even even had to fast 2 days a week. So please help me. Bless your heart. I'm sorry. Yeah. I can't put more money in your pocket, but what we can do is tell you who you don't need to pay so you've got money available for what your needs are. And if you're a veteran, we can tell you maybe some benefits there. So, call helps if you've got a question, if you're having struggling financially with this stuff. We're here. We want to help you. Can Capital One come after me if Discover sent me a charge off? Well, they're pretty much the same company now. Uh, they can come after you, but if your income's protected, it doesn't matter. You don't need to worry about it. So this person calls and asks, what about our homes? I still make my payment for my home. I'm 70 on Social Security. and unfortunately things happen. So debt collectors are suing me. Can they take equity from my home? How long? Um, they could sue and get a lien. They're not going to take your home. You can call and talk to us. We'll go over the situation, but you're not going to lose your home. You don't need. It's not the practice of consumer judgment creditors to take a person's home, even if a person has equity in the home over and above the exemption for the state where they live in. Many states, protect all the equity in a home. Okay. And if you owned it with your spouse and the judgment was just against you, if you die before your spouse, property goes to your spouse, the judgment lien drops off. If your kids was on the title when you die and on the title before there was a judgment, then if you pass away, then the property goes to your children, judgment lien drops off. There's a lot of reasons why you don't have to worry about your home situation, okay? How long can a bank freeze your account after receiving a garnishment notice to verify funds are protected? 48 hours or 2 days, but it usually takes, I tell people it takes 4 to 8 minutes normally. The rule went into effect in 2012. Took a while for everyone to get on board, but it pretty much gets done instantaneously. Okay, banks know what to do. If there's ever a problem, I get a call on Monday morning saying, "Oh, they took my money." And I'll tell them just be patient. They're going to release it later on this afternoon or Tuesday. They probably got the garnishment on Friday. And they didn't have time to look at your account, but they will now because they were closed during the weekend. So remember, twice the amount of federal benefits is protected automatically by your bank. I'm into a credit card debt for $38,000 and can't pay it off. I'm on Social Security and own my own home. Any help or advice would be welcome. We're going to call you back and tell you what you can do. You're going to be okay. You don't have to pay the credit card debt. So my next one here is really long. So I think we're going to stop right now. I'm going to remind everyone, tomorrow we're going to start Helps YouTube Live 2 hours later on Thursdays. Okay? So that would be um, 12 Pacific, 1 Mountain, 2 Central, 3 Eastern time. Okay? And I apologize if that's going to foul you up for listening to me live, but you can also listen to us later. Um, Call us if you have any questions, 855-435-7787, and we'll answer your questions. And Judy has a comment or a question here at the end. Interest is high. I have Social Security retirement. I can't afford to pay it anymore. Do I need to pay it? No. Your Social Security and your retirement income is protected. And what Helps does is represent seniors so the creditors can't call or send you demand letters anymore. You don't need to worry, Judy. Look at some more of our videos. Look at our website. Call us on our question. Call us on our phone, 855-435-7787. We'll answer your questions. You're going to be okay. We don't want you to worry. So thanks for participating today. And I will see you tomorrow, 2 hours later, God willing, and He will be. I have faith in that. And um, everyone have a great day. God bless. Bye.